Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Saturday afternoon. We know it's been a busy week, and thank you for joining us. And we have two very special guests with us. We have John Milne and we have Arindam Sengupta. A little introduction about our guest for today. Um, John is the co-founder and director of the Constellation Group. The Constellation Group offers advice and full range of support and placement services for young adults as they move towards higher education. Their specialist university placement consultants are experienced college and university guidance counselors with expertise in a wide range of university admission systems. Thank you, John, for joining us. Such a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. Arindam, thank you for joining us. Arindam's the co-founder and CIO of EduFund. EduFund's a platform for students and for it's actually a twofold platform for parents to start investing early on for the children's education, and then for students to get counseling as well as avail education loans so that their higher education process is much easier. Thank you, Arindam, for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Tayyab. Thank you, John, for joining us. And let's get started.
Yeah. So as we begin, I'll just tell you how the flow of this webinar is going to be. So instead, we didn't want, we didn't want to bore anyone with numbers and figures and facts on the screen. So it's just going to be a conversation between all of us. So I would be your voice, everyone's voice here, asking questions to John, and hopefully through the by the end of the webinar, we'll have more clarity on how to get started with getting admissions in the UK and what UK has in store for us. Yeah, let's get started. First question to you, John. It's one that almost everyone would have in their mind. Why study in the UK?
Thank you, Tayyip, and nice to see you again, Arindam, and good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm currently based in Bristol, in England, in the west of the country, and I'm delighted to be on the webinar today to talk to you about the United Kingdom and the university landscape here. I mean, just to get straight into it, Tayyip, the conditions in the UK over the past year or so, as they have been globally, have been very disrupted, and it's been very difficult for students internationally as well as here in the UK. But I think one of the real strengths of what has happened in the United Kingdom and the universities over the past year during the pandemic is that they've adapted incredibly quickly. And the experience that the students have had, whilst it's not always been face-to-face, the universities have responded with online learning in quite a superb fashion. They were using various platforms prior to the pandemic anyway, and various learning management systems. So when the pandemic hit, there were many opportunities for students to interact, not face-to-face, but via the online platforms. And my own daughter is at Durham University in the UK, and I can speak from her experience that the university was pretty seamless in ensuring that the students could continue with their studies and were pretty much business as usual. A lot of them couldn't come to the universities themselves for face-to-face teaching, and that was a difficulty, but learning online was made very interesting, very relevant, and given the conditions, it was a tremendous success. So I think one of the reasons why to study in the UK, the coronavirus sadly isn't going to go away anytime soon. There's going to be continuous restrictions on travel and interruption, but UK universities starting next month will be fully open with face-to-face teaching, some hybrid learning and some online. But I know from my own experience here in Bristol University, that has somewhere in the region of 30,000 students, is going to be open, and the students will be receiving face-to-face teaching. They will be studying in their halls of residence. And so I think looking forward, if a parent's looking for stability, looking for consistency, then UK universities absolutely offer those. And I know that the UK government is particularly committed to making sure that visas and borders are open for students to come to the UK. And I know that the UK post-Brexit is also focusing in on countries, especially like India, to try to make studying in the UK far easier and far more attractive. I think in general terms, why study in the UK? UK universities are some of the best universities in the world. They've been around for a long time, some of them many hundreds of years. And so they provide that stability, that consistency, that incredibly high quality of teaching that we all like to see and we all want, and particularly employers around the world really respect. So if you want to have global employment opportunities in the best companies around the world, then a UK degree, whether it's at undergraduate level or at master's level, really presents everyone with a fantastic outcome. And I think the way that the universities teach is also really important to remember. In the United Kingdom, the way that the degrees are structured and the way that the degrees are taught really encourages the students to be independent and really encourages them to be creative and very entrepreneurial as well. And that can be difficult at first because many students are used to being given the information and spoon-fed and supported. The universities have a lot of support, but they really do encourage the students to develop their own character, their own personality, and to learn independently. And by the time they graduate from a UK university, they really are ready for the workplace, and global companies are very attracted to students with at least an undergraduate or a bachelor's degree from a UK university. And we know that globally it's becoming more and more competitive. And so if you can graduate with a degree from a good university in the UK, it really does set you up for life and prepare you personally, but also I think improve your employment opportunities in the future.
I have a little different. So of course the opportunities are plenty, but if I had to ask you what are the highlights of the student experience in Britain? Like, for someone coming in from India. So what would be the highlight, something to look forward to when they come to England?
I think one of the great things about the United Kingdom or England in particular is that you've got a huge amount of history, you've got a huge amount of culture, and you've also got an enormous amount of entertainment and sport and music. And yet England and the United Kingdom is only a country of about 80 million people. Most of them are located in and around London and the south of England. So if a student coming from India is looking for more than just excellent academics, they can really experience everything that the UK has to offer in one place because everything's so accessible. I can't even begin to imagine what it's like in a country like India or China, where you've got billions of people and a huge amount of area to cover. In the United Kingdom, the students that come from India get a very intense experience, and they can visit and they can experience and they can be part of everything the UK has to offer. And it's very easy to get to, and it's very easy to experience. And I think the other thing about UK universities that is very important to remember for Indian families is that UK universities are incredibly international. Most universities probably have about 20%, 25% international students across a vast array of different countries. So again, if you're looking at preparing your children for a very global journey as part of their life and being part of a global company, then interacting with other students and peers from many different nationalities is critical as part of your studies at a UK university. And so Indian students will come away with amazing friendships and relationships and understanding of different nationalities and different cultures. And I think as a parent, that's one of the greatest investments you can give to your children, is that immersion in a very global environment, whilst also studying from an academic perspective at a very high level. And I think finally, the other really powerful experience that the students will get at a UK university is the interaction with the academics and the learning community in the university. Whilst the universities encourage independence and they very much want the students to develop their own style of learning and their own personality and be able to stand on their own 2 feet, because the numbers on each of the courses are relatively small. You're talking quite often between 80 to 100 students per course. You really do get to know those other students on your course, and you also get to know the academics that are teaching you as well. And for me, it's that relationship with the academics that really comes through very powerfully in a UK university. UK universities are not like American universities where you can be in a class of 200, 400, 500 students in some instances, and the relationship is not as informal as it is in the UK, in the US. It's very formal, and you do get to know your lecturers and you do get a lot of contact time with them. And I would say that that's also for a lot of students a very meaningful thing about coming to a UK university, because coming from an international school setting, quite often you're in a big class, you're in a big setting, and you're one of many. Whereas in a UK university, you really do get that personal touch. And I think that's quite a distinctive in the UK, certainly comparing it to the US and Canada and Australia.
Completely agree with you, John. I think something a lot of things to look forward to. Now, of course, UK has plenty of universities, must be in the hundreds, I'm sure. So, in that case, when the opportunities are so many and the colleges, the universities are so many, how do you narrow down? So we have plenty of students here who will be going to the UK probably in the next couple of years. So, how do they narrow down their search? How do they even begin this?
No, it's a very good question. And just to give you a bit of background in terms of the universities in the UK, one of the big differences, as I've just mentioned, between the UK and the US is that, and I studied in the US, so I have personal experience of this. When you're looking at a US university, you're typically looking at the university and the community and what that university can offer you. And what you choose as a subject to study is often secondary to the name of the university and the experience that you will get. In the UK, it's very different in that the first place to really start in terms of understanding which university you should go to in the UK is thinking very carefully about which course you want to study, because it's the course that will drive which university you end up at. And lots of parents get slightly confused and they think, oh, I have to go to Oxford, or I have to go to Edinburgh University, or I have to go to Imperial, or I have to go to Bristol University. Well, actually, if you adopt that approach, that might work out for you, but chances are you might be missing out on the best course and the best ranked course for your child, because it's about the course and not about the university in the UK. And increasingly, you will see some universities that are less well known in the UK with courses that are globally ranked in the top 10 and the top 20, whereas the actual university itself might not feature in the top 20. And it's critically important to remember that, because as well as being different in terms of the types of universities between the US and the UK. In the UK, as you know, the courses are 3 years in length, typically, whereas in the US, they're 4 years in length. And in the UK at university, you go into so much more detail and depth in your academic studies. If, say, you're studying, let's say, history or economics or physics, you will go into a tremendous amount of depth within that course in the UK. Whereas in the US or in many other universities, if they're adopting, for the most part, a liberal arts approach, yes, you will study history and economics and physics as your core major, but you will also study a whole range of other types of courses. So choosing a UK university is about choosing the right course. So I would encourage parents to really think about, what does my child want to study? What are they really good at? And then let's see, where are those different courses offered in the United Kingdom, not just in England, but there are some fabulous universities in Wales, in Northern Ireland, and particularly in Scotland, which is where I'm from. Universities like St Andrews and Edinburgh are ranked in the top 20 in the world. So very, very successful universities. So start by thinking about the course. And then once you've got your courses somewhat pinned down, then that's the time that you would start to think about, well, which universities shall I choose? And you should be thinking about which course your child would be taking, probably in their junior year. So in the UK, that's the lower sixth. It's probably grade 11 in an international school, or junior year if it's a high school model. So that gives you somewhere in the region of about 18 months before you would actually go to university. You really need to nail down that course. In the UK, the way that you apply to universities is through a common platform called UCAS. And if I can just share the website of one of those websites, if I take you to the UCAS website. So this is the Universities and College Admission System. And this is common to all universities in the UK. And this is a great website. And they have a YouTube channel as well that you can visit that gives you very clear guidelines at undergraduate level about when to apply, how to apply, and which universities would be the best ones for the course that you want to choose. So as you start to narrow down your course in your senior year, so at the very beginning of your final year of high school, you would then apply through UCAS to the various universities. And that process is quite prescriptive in that you have to submit your application and a personal statement to UCAS by the end of January, the 29th of January, as it says down here, in the year that you're going to go to university. So someone looking to go to university in 2022, so next September, in a year's time, will have to submit their application and their personal statement to UCAS by the 29th of January. The good news is that you can start submitting your application and your personal statement as soon as you want, effectively, after the 1st of September. And many students will do that in the hope that they will get a quicker response from the universities that they're applying to. The reality is that even if you send your application and your personal statement off to the universities through UCAS on the 1st of September or the 1st of October, you may not hear until next February or March, or in some instances April, as to whether you've been made an offer from that university. But having said that, if you do submit your application form and your personal statement to the university sooner rather than later, universities are constantly, almost on a monthly basis from September, October, reviewing the applicants and their personal statements and their application forms. And in cases where there is a very strong application or a student looks very attractive to that university, they will indeed make an offer. So again, for my own experience with my daughter, she submitted her UCAS application on the 1st of October, and she started receiving offers throughout October for the various universities that she applied for. My son, however, he applied at the very same time, but a year later. He didn't receive any offers until the January, February. So that was quite difficult for him because he felt quite anxious. So it's an anxious time for families and for students, but don't worry if you don't get a reply. It's not that they don't want you at the various universities. It's just they're going through a cycle of filtering through the different applications. Once you've submitted your application and your personal statement by the 29th of January in the year that you're going to go to university, you'll then have to wait until August before the universities will confirm whether or not they're going to offer you a place at their university based on the grades that you get. And we can talk about grades in a short while. The only thing that I would add to what I'm saying in relation to the application and the personal statement is it's worthwhile thinking very carefully as well about the personal statement, because the personal statement is critical to whether or not a university will be attracted to you as a student. And international students, this is the one area that really trips up international students. And that's quite often because they don't get the right advice, or they don't promote or sell themselves strongly enough. And that's where companies like us can really help, because we can help families and help students really beef up their personal statement, talk about the sorts of things that they really need to have in their personal statement, the experiences that they need to detail and explain, because that is going to make a huge difference to the actual application process.
Yes, I'm so sorry. So, John, I had questions being asked. So how different is the process from the UG application process to the PG and PhD process? Because we have some of our applicants, participants here asking.
Yeah, it's quite similar. I mean, I think for the postgraduate application process for masters, it's quite straightforward in that you apply straight quite often to the universities themselves, and they would be the ones that would give you a direct answer as to whether or not they want you on their master's course or not. And that's very different to bachelor's or undergraduate, where you have to go through UCAS. Obviously, for doctoral studies, that's a much longer process, but again, is done and can be done through the universities directly. So anything above bachelor's can be done through the universities, but undergraduate is a common application process done through UCAS.
Great. Actually takes us to the next slide automatically, where uh, we know the process now. Instead of searching for the university, we search for the courses. But the eligibility is a big question in most of our heads, where whether it's our marks or even the experiences that you mentioned. So how do you find ourselves like eligible? John, you're muted.
Sorry, the good news, sorry about that. The good news is that in the UK, there are around about 146 universities. So there are universities for everyone. And that's not to say that there are some universities where the bar is so low, anyone could get in. It's just that they are very different in terms of what they offer. So in terms of which university to go to and to get into, it's worth doing the research to understand what are their entry requirements. In the UK, there are typically three types of university. There are those universities that you would probably compare favorably to the Ivy League, which many people understand. And those are obviously Oxbridge, Oxford and Cambridge, LSE and Imperial. They are incredibly demanding application processes, which also include entrance examinations and entrance interviews. But if you're looking at a Russell Group university, which is pretty much all of those universities that we've all heard that are globally ranked in the top 50 in the world. Many of them I've mentioned already, such as Exeter and Bristol, Warwick University, Edinburgh, St Andrews, Durham. Those are all Russell Group universities, and many of the universities of London as well. You would be looking at around about ABB or AAB at A level to be able to get into one of those courses. And one of the interesting situations in the UK at the moment is that because there are no formal exams, many students are getting their predicted grades, which means that there's an enormous amount of grade inflation at the moment. And therefore universities are struggling to admit everybody that gets the grades to get in. And so some of the universities are already raising the barrier to entry because they're anticipating more and more students from overseas coming to UK universities. But there are also universities that sit beneath the Russell Group universities called the 1994 group. And many of those universities are the old vocational type polytechnics. But again, don't be deceived. There are courses at the University of the West of England, which is also in Bristol in England. And the University of the West of England is not a globally ranked university, but compared to Bristol University, which is a globally ranked university, the University of the West of England has some incredibly successful courses in law and in business and in animation and in gaming, and they are globally ranked. So the requirements vary depending on which course and which university you're going for. At IB level, which is another qualification that many of the parents will probably have heard of, typically 36 points at IB level is the same as AAA at A level. 34 points would probably be the equivalent of ABB at A level. So that's the sort of standard you need to have if you want to get into a Russell Group university or an Oxbridge style university, but there are universities for all students.
Thanks, John. I'd like to bring in Arindam for these questions here. This is an important part where we're all concerned about finances, how much it's going to cost us. Arindam, can you tell us like how to go about with the finances? Of course, we know it's going to be expensive, but how do we get an idea of what the expenses are?
Sure. So if you talk about studying in any foreign country, right? Let's take UK because we are talking about UK now. So there's typically when you study abroad, sorry, 1 second. Typically when you study abroad for your undergraduate, it's pretty hard to get a scholarship. So it's a little bit more expensive, or it's significantly more expensive. So when something is more expensive, how do you go about it? You go about it by planning earlier. Remember, studying abroad is never cheap. And typically, if you study at tier 1 universities in the UK, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but tier 1 UK universities will be about $125,000 to $150,000, right, for the duration of college, right, John? $125,000 to $150,000. And this is a lot of money. You have to plan for it before time. So at EduFund, we do have a planning app. We help parents and students do it. Unfortunately, let's say you're late in planning, right? You can always take a loan, right? I mean, that's another way of helping with the finances. But the key again is to figure out where you want to go. And that's where people like John really come in, because you could study anywhere, right? In the UK, study anything, anywhere. How do you still spend that much money and get the best outcome? That is the trick here. And that's why counseling becomes such a critical part. How do you make your money work the best for you? I look at counseling in that way.
Annam, so 125,000. So if you have to be specific, let's say we need an amount
That's
to
about a
plan it
crore.
out.
That's, let's say 150,000 is about 1 crore, right? And
Okay.
usually 70% of that is tuition. The rest is your accommodation and living expense, right? Because remember, you're in a foreign country where your mode of payment is the pound, right? These are expensive things, right? You start spending 10 pounds a day, you live somewhere for 365 days. That's a cost, right? So all of this puts together, and yeah, you slowly reach about $150,000, which is a crore.
And what's the loan process like with EduFund?
Sure. So I would recommend everybody to not wait till you get university admission. Even 6 months before, you can get pre-approved for a loan. You ideally you should have a collateral, but if you don't have a collateral, and say you already have an admit letter, and you are getting admission in one of the better universities or higher ranked, you can get up to 30, 40 lakhs collateral free. But the first thing is know how much is your loan burden. Remember, these are things which, if you plan a little bit early, is very easy. So the entire loan process, I mean, start 2 months before. It only takes a few weeks, but start a couple of weeks before. Start 2 months, give yourself time, arrange the paperwork, and then that's the first step to having a quick loan.
And scholarships is another big conversation. I want John and Arindam to add in here. So we start with John. John, what's the availability of scholarships? Like, where do we look?
Yeah, again, there's a section on the UCAS website that can give you information about scholarships, but the reality is that unlike in the US, where universities have significant endowment funds, I think Harvard and Yale and Stanford are 32 billion. In the UK, endowment funds within universities are quite limited. And so scholarships and bursaries are typically only handed out at the master's and or doctoral level. For bachelor's and for undergraduates, you have to be exceptional, or there has to be a significant need for the university to be able to support financially. And that's also very different, as you know, to the US, where you can get a range of financial aid and scholarships added to your package depending on your abilities. But that's probably one thing where in the UK it's not as obvious to be able to get financial aid or support from a university.
Great. So just to clarify for everyone, so you go to the UCAS website, let's say for the UG courses, if you want a scholarship, and you have all of the scholarships available there. They're all listed there, right?
Not all of them. Most of them, I would say the best place to start is to identify which courses you want to take, and then the universities, and then decide which universities to then contact to understand about scholarships and bursaries. I think if you're going to start looking for scholarships and bursaries, first of all, you probably, or you could potentially end up at a university that isn't worth the investment. So it's really worth deciding, what do you want out of this, and which course and university should I put my child in? And then having an open and a transparent dialogue with the admissions department at those universities, because the universities are very keen to be diverse. They want to be incredibly international. They want really good people to come to their place of study. And individually, if you're honest and transparent and open with them, they may well enter into a dialogue with you to create some sort of arrangement that can help you as a family. But don't expect it, because it's not normally how UK universities would work. And because they're very popular at the moment, there's less need for them to deliver on that.
Thanks, John. So we finally have come to the section everyone's been waiting for. We have plenty of questions coming in. So everyone who would raise their hands, I'm going to ask all of the questions. We have
Just,
around,
Tayyab, if I can make a
yeah,
quick point.
yeah.
Hello, everybody, once again. So we will try to get many of these questions as we can, but please do reach out on our app and on the website. Please send in your queries, and whatever is your need, we can still help you after the webinar. So if you don't get to your question, there is a way of reaching us. Tayyab will share after the webinar. Sorry.
So I've already shared the link on the chat box. So you can download the application and of course have a private counseling session made available for you. Until then, so we have a few questions, John. Let's get to them fast. Uh, uh, would my so Nasiruddin asks, will my spouse holding dependent would be able to apply for study at university? I'm not sure if that entirely makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
So
Is
yeah,
this
the
yeah?
answer, sorry, Ty, the answer is that there's really no age limit to applying to university in the UK. And if you want to apply as a bachelor's or undergraduate student, then universities typically don't have an age barrier. Obviously, masters and doctors, that's very different. It's any age. But yeah, undergraduate, there are some spouses who do take on an undergraduate degree at the age of 35, 45, 55. So it's not outside the realms of possibility.
Yeah. Kiran's asking for masters outside London or inside London, which is best for a middle class boy from India. So he's asking about how much of an effect does outside and inside London have?
Yeah, it's considerable. And even the effect of London, the south of England, the north of England and Scotland, effectively the further north you go in England, the more cost effective it will be, particularly in terms of accommodation. The price in London is very expensive. To the west of London, Reading, Bristol, Birmingham, less expensive, but still more expensive than places like Manchester, Newcastle, Liverpool. And then obviously if you go up to Scotland, to Aberdeen, Glasgow, Edinburgh, less expensive than England. And Wales is probably the cheapest, one of the cheaper locations in the United Kingdom, but some great universities there as well, including Cardiff. So it does have a big impact. London, I think to go and study in London, you have to be very clear about why you're doing that or have very deep pockets.
Sakshi is asking a very relevant question. She's asking about the job opportunities and the placements. Is there help from universities and what's the job market like?
Yeah, so that's a very relevant question. So there are two elements to that. Work placements are becoming more and more the norm at universities. Universities are realizing that particularly international students need that work experience if they want to get a job post study. So more and more universities are creating job opportunities during their academic studies and work experiences and internships. And then, of course, after graduation, the United Kingdom has changed its visa provision and has a 2-year postgraduate study visa opportunity. So anyone graduating from an undergraduate or a bachelor's degree can now stay in the UK for up to 2 years to seek employment. Whereas a year ago, it was 4 months after study, which was very difficult to get a job. The UK employment market is very buoyant, and is very global. One of the benefits of having a city like London in the United Kingdom is that whilst it's very expensive for studying, the job opportunities are immense. And certainly around the UK, there are growing opportunities for employment in a range of different sectors. And the UK economy is very strong at the moment. And there's a real skills shortage in the UK. And in certain areas, particularly in IT, data sciences, cybersecurity, there are enormous opportunities and very well-paid jobs for international students in especially England.
We just take a couple more questions, John. So we have a very, I don't know, unique question from Viju Reddy, who's asking, is there an opportunity to join immediately if I have everything else ready? Is there something of that sort of possible?
Yes, it would still have to be done through UCAS, but depending on the course that is being looked at, it really just depends on whether there are spaces. But applications are taken all the way up until the university begins, and they typically start at the beginning of October, so there's still quite a bit of time to go. But many of the courses will be full, particularly the popular ones. But yeah, applications are still being taken. And many people are still deciding whether or not, even if they've got the grades, they will take up the place at university in the UK. So there's still quite a lot of movement.
John, last question. So this one's a very subjective question. I graduate next year, May. So when should I submit my application for September intake, sir? So just before you answer, John, so I see plenty of questions here and they're all very subjective. So for that, I'd suggest you download the EduFund app so that you can book a counseling session with John and his peers. So they can guide you better and, you have the entire focus the entire time. Yes, John.
Yeah, if it's graduating next year, then really you need to be registering with UCAS as soon as possible to start the process and to get the advice and the support that you need. Again, it's not too late. It's still more than 1 year until university begins, so it's ample time. And as long as you have a good idea about which course you'd like to take, then pulling the application form together and putting the personal statement together is also very possible in the time frame, given that applications don't need to be in until the 29th of January.
Thanks, John. I think with that, we come to the end of the Q&A session. John and Arindam, if you want to leave our students with a parting statement, please, John.
Yes, I just want to say that it's been an incredibly difficult time for everyone. And I know that in India, it has not been especially an easy time. And with young people, it's very difficult to see them being disrupted in terms of their education because they've done nothing wrong. And it's such a shame that there's so much uncertainty. But the good news is that through counseling and support from people like myself, we can give you very transparent, very honest, very fair overview of what your options are. And going forward in terms of getting value for money, UK universities are open for business. The vaccination program in the UK is almost 90% complete. And so it's a relatively safe place to be. And the universities are very committed to getting back to face-to-face learning almost immediately. So despite what's going on around the world, it's a great option to study in the UK. And at the moment, there's possibly no greater gift that you could give to your children than an opportunity to study somewhere that's certain, that's stable, that's high quality, and that's safe.
Thank you, John. Arindam?
Sure. So for me, it is, so I guess the number of people we have on this call, there would be different people at different stages of their application, right? There are people who are 1 year away from application. There are people who are maybe 6 months away. And there are people who may be 2 years away, right? So for me, it studying abroad, and I can talk from my own experience. I have done my undergrad in the US and masters also. The best way of getting the most out of this experience is by planning early. You talk to counselors, you start financial planning, you start working on your visa, you start working on your immigration, maybe you start working on your education loan. So all of these start early. There is nothing like I'm too early to plan for education abroad. There is nothing like that. Because when you start managing these 5 or 6 things, suddenly you will think, I wish I had 1 month more. That's what happened to me when I was going for my master's. I was working and I kept thinking I'll do it 1 month before, like I had everything else figured out. And in the last month, it became crazy. So start early.
Thanks, Arindam. Thank you, John and Arindam, for joining us. This is first of many to come. Thank you, everyone else who's joined us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.